welcome Alex Stein.
Here is what I know about time. It does keep on slipping into the future. You may be able to save it in some kind of container, perhaps a bottle. Cher apparently can turn it back. Chicago, and I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure that's not the city, but the band, doesn't believe that anyone can really quantify, subdivide, accurately measure, and report back on it. And of course, for every one of it, there is a purpose under heaven. Turn, turn, turn. I've also heard it said that time renders inaccurate and unreliable our memories. But even though I am here tonight to talk to you about something that happened a long time ago, I can assure you that the details I will tell you are at least 100% accurate. And I can make this claim because, at least when it comes to this event, in the words of William Shakespeare, I remember every little thing as if it happened only yesterday. And this, no, not Shakespeare. The other one, you know, Meatloaf. I get them confused sometimes, as one does. This is called Rock and Roll Manifesto. She stood before me holding a record in her hand, a record that had a total run time of 42 minutes and 11 seconds, of which 3 minutes and 9 seconds contained what we had decided was our song. At the time, I thought this was a mutual decision, but looking back, I realize it was more me. This record, by the way, was long out of print, but it was one that I loved and had spent years looking for. And this is back when it meant something to search for music. This is before the internet, when record companies would let records go out of print and you could only find them used. Hell, this is back when there were record companies and records. And she told me she found this particular record at the Goodwill store by her parents' house. And then she said, "Oh, and I don't love you anymore." Oh. I know, it's the "oh" that sticks with you. And then she tilted her head to one side and gave me a look of great concern about my emotional state, apparently unaware that...
Oh, shit. I'm sorry, there's an earthquake happening. Pause for 1 second.
And then she tilted her head to one side. And she gave me this look of great concern about my emotional state, apparently completely unaware that my emotional state had just been completely altered by what she'd told me. And I said nothing for a very long time. And finally she touched my arm and said, "What are you thinking right now?" And I said this: "I believe in guitars and in guitarists. I believe in drums, but not in drummers. I believe in bass and keyboards, but I don't understand them. I believe in punk poetry and the rhyming couplet, in power chords and choruses that won't leave your mind for weeks, and songs so great that they leave you no choice. You must listen to them 30 times in a row instead of leaving your house. I believe in the long, slow fade and the false ending and the Bo Diddley beat and the syncopated rhythm that keeps you slightly off balance. I believe there are some songs so perfectly formed that they must have come down directly from the gods, from some mystical Valhalla where there is one perfect chord as yet unheard on earth that makes grown men weep. I I believe in lyrics so insightful that they change you forever, and that the line, "the car we bought together just started to rust," is the saddest opening line in the history of rock and roll. And the line, "I hate the asshole I become every time I'm with you," is the truest. I believe in belt drive turntables and speaker wire and crates of records that you drag from crappy apartment to crappy apartment, even if you leave your furniture and the dishes behind. I believe it doesn't matter who you love or who you fuck, but you never forget the music that was playing when you lost your virginity. And there is something very, very wrong with you if there was no music playing when you lost your virginity. I believe in the Clash and Buddy Holly and the Everly Brothers and John Lennon and the Ramones and Squeeze and Jane Siberry. I believe that Mama Cass Elliot invented Crosby, Stills and Nash, but Neil Young invented himself, and he'd give it all up tomorrow if he could just sing like Smokey Robinson. I believe Lou Reed was right when he turned on the radio and his life was saved by rock and roll, and that must have been terribly confusing for John Cale, who was classically trained and composed symphonies and played the viola, the fucking viola. It must have been very confusing for him to be in a band with Lou Reed, who thought that anyone who wrote a song with more than 2 chords was just showing off. I believe Paul McCartney is so talented that even his farts come out gorgeously melodic, and yet there is a special circle in hell where Wonderful Christmas Time plays on an infinite loop for the worst sins that you can imagine. But most of all, I believe that you do not deserve this record that you found at the Goodwill by your parents' house. Oh, I believe you when you say you don't love me anymore, but I don't believe that you love this record, because I told you about this record and how I hunted for it in used record stores in 4 different states. This record just fell into your lap. You haven't put in the time. You never loved this tragic band whose leader killed himself, leaving behind a note that said that their manager, who'd embezzled millions, was a soulless bastard. The same band whose second most important songwriter killed himself a few years later, and he left a letter for the lead guitarist that just read, "You're next. You don't deserve this record." You don't deserve this record. You haven't suffered for it. And I believe that's my fault, because I taught you the ways of my people, the obsessive music fans. I brought you to all of our most sacred places. I took you to that store below the vegan restaurant in the lesbian college town where they sold the import version of that XTC double album for a loss because they hated how the American record company cut 5 songs and ruined the sequencing just to make it fit on 1 disc. I now know it was a mistake to play for you the music I love and tell you about these bands and explain why every song was important. And there was always a reason. It was never just I liked it, because I really listened. I really cared, not like you. And after each listening session, you'd go home and you'd put on James Taylor's Greatest Hits, or that live Barry Manilow album that your sister bought you for Christmas the year before she went off for college. And that is why the hollow husk that would have held your soul if you only had one will dry up and blow away, and no one will mourn you and no one will remember. And then she said nothing for a while. And finally, she held out the record to me and said, "You're right. I don't deserve this." And I pushed it back to her and said, "Listen, someday when you need rock and roll to save you, you're gonna want to have that, because on that dark night of your soul, you're going to be fucked if all you have to protect you is Christopher Cross or Huey Lewis and the News." And she took the record back and she walked away. Now, all these years later, my friends who were even more obsessed with music than I was, they hardly ever listen to records anymore. They have families and careers And to be honest, there's some things in my life now that are more important too. Still, on foggy nights, when I have the windows down, if the right song comes on the radio, I'll punch the gas and drive a little faster. It's silly, it's childish. I know I should have outgrown this years ago, but here's the thing. I still believe, and I still find myself in the few used record stores that remain open, going through all of the bins. Only now I'm not sure if what I'm really looking for is another copy of that record, or just the girl who deserves it.